All right, very good morning to all of you who have joined us today. So I think we will get started. Let's just go to the chat window in case you're able to see the chat window, and just dropping in a hello over there. In case you're able to see the chat window, why don't you just go ahead and tell me which city you're joining us from? Hi Pratap, hi Prasad, hi Pooja, Mumbai, Pune, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Riyadh, Seattle, Mumbai, Kota, wow, Chennai, Ludhiana, Mumbai, Bangalore, Calgary, San Jose. I was in San Jose at some point in my life. Hashtag 10-year challenge. So 10 years ago, I was actually somewhere in the Bay Area at some point. Bangalore, New Delhi, Jalandhar, Muzaffarnagar. Very interesting to see. Ghaziabad, Kakinada, Johannesburg. Wow, that's so nice to see from Andhra, Delhi, Gandhinagar. I'm actually Yash. I do come from Gujarat, so there's a connection. I come from Vadodara, so that's the Gujarat connection that I have. Ermon Misra is from, don't know, Faridabad, Bangalore, Chandigarh. Excellent. I see a lot of students from a lot of different places, and it's just so nice to connect on a good Saturday morning with people from all over the world. It's really energizing for me. And then we have someone from Sydney, right? San Francisco, one of the best places according to me to live is San Francisco. If you were to not take the cost, it's super expensive. But apart from that, I think it's one of the best cities to live. And of course, Bangalore, right? So how can we miss Bangalore? So that's always my favorite. That's my that's been my karma bhumi. My janma bhumi in that sense is Gujarat. My karma bhumi has been Bangalore. So great, excellent. I'm so happy to see all of this. We have got 123 participants so far. I think the number is going to go more as we go on. So without much ado, let me just get into what I have in store for you, improving your profile, a 6-month game plan. Right. A couple of ground rules before we get started. I want to make sure that this session is organized. The next 90 minutes, you're able to get as much value and whatever I promise, I hope I'm able to deliver on that. So if you stay with me till the end of the webinar, I'm going to give you like a plan as to, how to work on your profile. Again, remember, this is not, this is not something that is, you know what, let me just get to that when I talk about it. But just to let you know, there is a lot of action items on your end. So if you have a paper and a pen, or if in your laptop you have a notepad open, make sure that you're drawing notes, make sure that you're keeping points so that you can revisit it after the webinar gets done, right? But in order for us to make sure that the webinar goes as per plan, there is a chat window. So I think most of you have figured out what the chat window is. This is the window where you ended up writing in your name and your city. So that's pretty much the chat window. But there is also a Q&A window, correct? I'll get to that. But before that, let's take a poll. So we also have a poll. So let's see. Go ahead, first poll. Just getting to know you a little better. When do you plan to take the GMAT? Perfectly okay if you have not decided, but if you have a general sense that, okay, this is when I'm planning to take, it will be good to punch in what you think. Excellent. So I think about 11%, 12% planning to take it before March in the next few months, but a huge chunk, there is 40% planning to take it in the March-April timeframe. A 38% plan to take, 36% plan to take it after April, and about 11% plan to take it or have not decided yet. Excellent. So Just 1 second. Yeah. So great. And some of you know what? Thanks so much. I have not put one more option which is already taken. So if you already taken, that also obviously is one option that you might have. Excellent. So I got a good sense. The other thing that I wanted to just to give you a sense of how it is. So this is how the split seems to be. Majority of you planning to take it around March, April. Right. So great. That is really the thing that I had on the poll. We also have a Q&A box for asking questions. Please write out your specific questions in the Q&A box. The session is getting recorded. The session will essentially be given to you. So once you go to the same link, I think it will get uploaded. So the whole recording will be available. You can always rewind it. In about a week's time, we also will put it up on YouTube. But having said so, since you have decided to invest the next 90 minutes of your life in this webinar, make sure that you shut down all the other windows, because sometimes it can be very distracting and can take our focus away. All right, and one last thing, in case there is a lag from my end, as I said, there could be a power problem, there could be an internet issue, a bunch of issues. In case there is an issue, please let me know, and I would be, I would check at my end. But here's the deal: even if one person is able to hear me, right, I would imagine that the problem is at your end. Correct? I just need one person to make sure that you're able to hear me, because if that is the case, then the others might have a problem. Also a request, in case people are writing on the chat window when I'm speaking, I might not notice. In case you're able to hear me, someone else is saying, I'm not able to hear, I request you to just go type in the chat window that you're able to hear me and ask that person to maybe log off and log back in. All right? Cool. So with that out of the way, just a couple of things. My introduction, my name is Arun. I think most of you perhaps have heard me, probably have seen my YouTube videos. I'm the founder and CEO at Crackverbal. And I think a lot of what I have to say is not based so much in terms of, so I think a lot of my knowledge is based on actually seeing my students get to a B school. So I know their life before they went to a B school. I know their life when they were at the B school. And now I get to hear their life after they have graduated. Many of these students have graduated, 2 years, 5 years. And, when I look at their journey, I'm able to get a more holistic picture. And what I really have to offer is my experience. I just tell people that I'm not necessarily the smartest guy in the room. I don't like to be the smartest guy in the room, but I think it's just that my experience of having worked with students, I just hope that I am able to offer those insights. See, because what happens when I hear a lot of students come and tell me, what does it take to get to Harvard? What does this guy eat, right? How does he, does he breathe? Is he normal? Does he eat food? And it's so funny because I've had students who have gone to Harvard, and I know the kind of transformation that has happened in their life once they've gone to Harvard. And not just Harvard, I'm talking about many of the top schools, including many students who go to ISB every year. So that's another school that usually ranks among the top schools, obviously in India, but I think globally also it features high up. So we have a lot of students applying to ISB. So what I really have to offer is my knowledge of what it takes. I have seen a successful application to, let's say, Wharton, correct? So I just offer that advice. It's nothing special, but just a ringside view of how things work. A bit about Crackverbal, I think most of you know, but it started off as a side project. I started teaching in 2006. Before that, I used to teach at a variety of different places. And since then, we have grown, teaching so many different students and sending them to top schools. And really the role that we see ourselves play at Crackverbal is that of a bridge. So we have world-class faculty, we have people who have been there, done that. And then we have people who aspire to go there. And, I like to believe that Crackverbal is just a bridge that connects these mentors to aspirants, to students who want to be there. I won't waste a lot of time on these slides, okay? But I just wanted to go through the basics, some of the mentors who we have on our panel. And each one, I think, apart from the fact that they have done an MBA, I think our mentors, the other aspect that they bring to the table is that of empathy. And I think that's a very key skill, right? If someone who's got an IIT JEE rank of, let's say, a top 10, went to do his PTech from IIT Bombay, then worked for Google for 3 years, went to do his MBA from Harvard. A lot of these people, my experience has been, they don't know what it takes to be in your shoes. They don't know what it takes to actually fail. They don't know what it takes to sometimes have a bad luck of the lot and end up in a job that you don't like. So I think many of our mentors, what they really bring to the table is a certain sense of empathy. So I just wanted to underscore on that point. Couple of free resources to get you started. The YouTube channel. So in case you have not been to the YouTube channel, please do visit our YouTube channel. Do subscribe. One of my New Year resolution for 2019 has been to create more content for the website, and probably around March, we will get to a point where I'm going to be uploading, at least 3 to 4 videos every week. And there is a ton of stuff that I would like to share. And in case you are on this journey to do an MBA, trust me, Crackverbal, the YouTube channel, is going to be a great partner to have. We also have a lot of resources on our webpage. So in case you have not done so already, you can head to the website, have a look at our free resources. We got a bunch of things, including ebooks. Okay. We also have a free profile evaluation. In case you have not done so already, please go to our application form. So let me just do this. Let me just probably select this and let me just select this and put it up in the chat window over here. Yeah. So I guess if you're able to hear, okay. So in case you're able to hear, just try to bump up your volume. Anyone who's heard me speak in person knows that I'm pretty loud. So I think you don't need to, just need to up the volume at your end, right? As I said, right, so if you fill out the profile evaluation, we give you a PDF, but along with that, we also have someone call you and perhaps walk you through, in case you have not done, in case you're already a Crackverbal student, in case you have joined us as part of the, the MBA program that we had last month. You already have this going. This is only for non-students. In fact, that brings me to the second question. I just wanted to check how many of you are actually Crackverbal students? So I'm just going to launch a poll for this. By the way, there is this particular feature over here, which is raise your hand. I have no idea how it works. So in case you're raising your hand, I wouldn't know. So yeah, I don't know how it works. Okay, so I see a lot of people raising their hands, but I'm not sure. All right. Excellent. So there are a few more students who have not responded. So just go ahead. Let me see how many of the 172 are present and here at this point. Okay, cool. People are still voting. Last 10. Those of you who have not voted. All right. So we got a lot of you who are students. So we got, I think it's a good mix. So we have a lot of you who are students, but also we have almost, an equal number who are not students yet. So good mix. And just to understand this a little better, so, in terms of the webinar, so in case you have attended a webinar in the past, I just wanted to know that. So let me just ask you the last poll and then we're going to get, so let me just do this. I'm just going to get on to the next part, but last question before I get on to the actual meat of it. Have you attended any other webinar? Just curious. Okay, so we got a lot of you first-time attendees. many of you attending it for the first time. All right, great. And I also see some of you attended maybe one or so, but a majority seem to be people who are doing the webinar or hearing the webinar for the first time. Excellent, great. So without, as I said, let's get started with this. So just before I get started, I already see questions being asked. See what happens, right? And I'm just requesting all of you to be a little cognizant of what you're putting in the Q&A window. So for example, I see that there is a conversation happening over here. I won't be able to attend the entire session. Would you be? So all of this, please try to put it in the chat window. Even if you're responding to something, please put it in the chat window. Please don't put things like hello in the Q&A session, because see, the Q&A is very important for us to keep the whole session successful. Kindly request you to be very judicious about the questions you're asking in the Q&A window. The quality of today's webinar will be dependent on you putting in questions. For example, so let me do this. Let me leave it up to you. So just be a little cautious before you put your questions on the Q&A window, right? So cool. So let me now kind of get started with what we have for the session today. What do AdComs look for? Okay, very simple question. And I know a lot of you probably at this point are thinking, whatever I've done in my life for the last 20 odd years, I probably was more of a passenger. Things happened to me. But now that I'm very clear that I want to apply to a B school, what is it that I can possibly do over the next 6 months in order to improve my profile? In other words, what can I do to improve my probability of making it to a top B school, right? This is the question that you have in your mind. Then for that, we need to first dig a little deeper, and we need to first ask this question. When your application is being read, what does the application reader look for? What is it that he is looking for? See, all of it is data, right? Your GMAT score and this and that. There are a bunch of things that he's going to be looking at. He's going to look at your essays. He's going to look at your recommendation letters. But what is it at the core that he's looking for? And for that, it's important for us to understand, what does an MBA really hope that you become? Once you do an MBA, what does the B school want you to become? And if you think the B school wants you to become a manager, you're mistaken. That is a given. That's something that is granted. In fact, many people end up being managers even before they get their MBA. So what is it that an MBA really looks for? The MBA or an MBA school is trying to see, does this guy have CEO potential? Okay, what is that? CEO potential. Does this person have what it takes to be successful? Right? And remember this is one of the biggest myths, which is MBAs don't make people successful. Successful people make MBA programs look great. So they are not going to take some koila and turn it into a diamond, right? They are looking at unpolished, uncut diamonds that they can polish and make into a jewel, right? They are looking at people who anyways would become a CEO. And this is really my experience based on, so many years. All the students who have made it to a top school, I can tell you, they would have succeeded in life even without an MBA, right? So the question that kind of then comes, how do I predict future success? How do I know with or without an MBA whether you will be successful or not, correct? That's the question that B schools are also asking. how do I guarantee that if I were to put my, if I were to bet on this guy, what is the guarantee that he would be successful in life? And think about it from a B school perspective, there are a lot of things that help, correct? Number one, the reputation of the B school goes up. Think about it. All the B school is doing is trying to figure out successful people, giving them the badge. Okay. The badge could be Harvard class of 2020 or ISB class of 2020. They are just distributing these badges. And every year they have only so many badges to give away. They have only 900 badges to give away. 900 seems like a big number, but among all the successful professionals who want to get a top MBA program on their CV, 900 is still a small number, which is why most of these B schools are competitive. So they want to give these badges to people who they think will be successful. How do I know if this is successful? I have to go and dig into certain factors. Of all the factors, I need to look at a handful of factors, and usually B schools look for these 6 factors. And I'm going to be deep diving into each one of them. Okay. But these are the 6 factors that you need to work on. And what I would do is I would ask you to create a simple Excel or me a notepad, just write down these 6 things. And as we go, what I would like you to do is I would like you to think, I would like you to assess where you are at this point, correct? So let's look at each one of these 6 factors in detail. What I will do at the end of each factor, I will stop and I will try to take some questions from the Q&A, okay? I will try to take some questions from the Q&A, all right? And then we will proceed. So what will also happen is it will also give you a sense of what kind of questions to ask, in the Q&A box. All right. So let's look at each one of these 6 factors. Let's start off with the first factor, which is academic potential. Now, why do B schools want to look at your academic potential? See, you ought to understand that B school is a pretty, it's a place where the 1 or 2 years is going to be pretty intense, right? Very intense. If you think about it, it is not just attending classes. Even before attending classes, you are expected to do pre-read. This is not college where you wake up one day morning and you just land up, right? You have to do pre-read. During the sessions, during the classes, you will also be evaluated for class participation, which means you need to be asking questions. You need to be participating in discussions. Over and above, you're also going to be given a lot of group work that you'll be doing with your team. These would be project works. Plus, you could also volunteer for paid, unpaid internships, which happen with the corporate. And in between all of this, you also need to worry about your job search, correct? So you're going to be interviewing people. You're going to be going to networking events. You're going to be calling alumni to campus. That, trust me, and this is based on, people that I've spoken to, can be a very, very intense and sometimes overwhelming affair for you. So what these schools are looking at is saying that, will this guy be able to hack it? Will this guy be able to really cope with the academic pressure that a top B school demands from its students? How do they know that? They know that from some key measures. They look at your undergrad institute, they look at your undergrad GPA, obviously your GMAT scores, any patents or research work that you might have done. All of these, along with any advanced degrees or certifications, all of these are going to tell me about your academic potential. All of this will tell me whether you have the aptitude to actually hack the 1 or 2 years of a top MBA program. Correct? Now, think about it. In all of these, what you would realize is perhaps the only thing that is in your control, right, is your GMAT scores, correct? So if I were to answer questions that I usually get, 90% of students, when they ask me, they say, Arun, my undergrad scores were poor. And I understand that perfectly, because when you were an undergrad, the world was a different place. You had no clue what you wanted to do. You lacked the maturity. You lacked the seriousness, correct? And maybe you are not well. Maybe you were too caught up in extracurriculars. Maybe you had a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and life was very different when you were in college. But if there is one thing that can actually wipe away poor academic record, it has to be your GMAT score. If you have poor academic record and a poor GMAT score, it's going to be very hard for B schools to be convinced that you have what it takes to succeed in a high pressure environment that the B school will have. Of course, there is also a little bit that you have in terms of advanced degrees or certifications. So apart from your GMAT scores, the other thing that you can potentially work on is any advanced degree or certifications that you can do which requires effort, right? So this cannot be a certification like a participation certificate, right? For example, those who are in finance, maybe a CFA could be a certification that could add value, right? The more international it is, the more recognized it is, the more harder it is for you to get this degree or certification, the more beneficial it is for your application. So what I want you to do is just think about it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good or bad do you think your academic profile is? Praveen, please put questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat window. Okay? Okay, I want all of you to think about it. Just take a minute and try to think on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. Where do you think you are when it comes to applications, when it comes to academic potential, right? So I'm just going to quickly answer some questions. Sri Chandana, will 2 months be sufficient? Too broad a question, but
it's 11 o'clock.
It's too broad a question, but yeah, 2 to 3 months should be sufficient. So that's the answer. Avik Datta, and all B-School application, there is one question. Do you have any professional certification? Yeah, you can, Avik. But what is the value of a Udemy certification? Think about it, right? So, as I said, what is also important is not just the certification, right? But also how hard it is for you to actually get that certification. I think that's the key to remember over here. Kumar Babbar asked, I am a student with bad academic record, 60%, blah, 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 blah. Get a obscenely high GMAT score, you are sorted. Okay. Garima, you got a 550. At 550, it's going to be very hard. My recommendation is for you to retake the GMAT. Anyways, 2018-19 season is already done. So you need to focus on 2019-20 application season. You have time. Even a marginal increase of 100, 120 points in your GMAT scores will go a long way in helping you with your application. Okay, just be a little judicious about the questions, please. It's my request to you. A lot of you are asking very personal questions. I will be helping you in the profile evaluation. The only problem is if it goes this way, I will have to ditch the entire Q&A part. So because of a few people, the other people will get adversely affected. Just look at the kind of question. Someone is writing 6, someone is writing 6.57. Please do not misuse the Q&A box. Just a humble request. Otherwise, I'll have to ditch the whole Q&A session altogether and go ahead with, my this thing. And I think that's what I'll have to do. I'm going to ditch the Q&A box. So I will be going ahead with this session today. I think it's just that it's impossible for me to help answer all the queries. Please get in touch with someone from the team. You're already in touch with someone at Crackverbal, and they would be able to help you with all your queries. So today I will be going without the Q&A, but I will try to see if there is a potential for me to answer a few questions, but it is just that I've been flooded with nonsensical questions, and it becomes very hard for me to, just go through it and, answer all the queries. All right. So as I said, the first part is how do I enhance? So I think you got a sense of what I'm trying to say over here, which is try to see if you are able to gauge yourself, right? And these are the two things that I put in the red box that can potentially help enhance your academic potential. The second part is, what score do you need, right? Now, again, if you look at what has happened in the last few years with regards to the average GMAT scores. Now, I'm going to kind of bifurcate it into ISB and Indian B schools and foreign B schools. I'm just going to bifurcate the GMAT score requirement for ISB Indian schools and foreign B schools. For foreign B schools, especially the US schools and Canadian schools, schools like Rotman, the average GMAT score has just ballooned. Okay, it's just mushroom. You won't believe at some point a 720 was considered an excellent score for a top 10 B school, a top 10 school in the US. A 720 was considered a fantastic score. But today, a 720 could be maybe subpar. We are looking at scores at a 750, 760 level for a top 10 school in US and Canada, right? That's really what's happened. There has been a huge inflation in GMAT scores, correct? So if you're looking at a top 10 school in the US, I would recommend at least a 740 plus, which would be in the 97th, 98th percentile range, correct? And that's really how it's been. I know a lot of people will tell you that GMAT is just a number. I agree it's just a number, but unfortunately, it also serves as a good measure because unless and until there is something very unique in your profile, and trust me, you think it's unique, but it's not as unique as you think, right? So it's important that you get a really strong GMAT score if you're looking at a school outside of India. But if you're looking at an MBA in India, here is good news for you, okay? The good news is in terms of, your overall GMAT score requirement, what ISB, IIM Bangalore, IIM Calcutta, all of these schools, what they have realized is the number of applicants that they get is typically from India, okay? So many of these people typically apply from India. You don't get a lot of international applicants in the Indian schools, correct? Think about it. ISB, the full form is Indian School of Business, right? IIM, the full form is Indian Institute of Management. Name Indian itself is there in the name, right? So I think to a large extent for these schools, the average GMAT scores has been decreasing. What it means is an ISB or IIM is no more keen to look at other facets of your application than just a GMAT score. So if you have a 650 on the GMAT, and let's say that you're a woman applicant working in, let's say, the retail industry, correct? So some amount of diversification in your domain, in your background, the chances of you getting into ISB is a lot more than getting into a top 10 school in the US, correct? So my suggestion, if you have not taken the GMAT so far, try to score as high as possible. Now, that's the first thing with regards to academics. Now let's get to the second factor, which is work experience. What do they look for? I've had a lot of students who come and tell me, Arun, I have X number of years of experience. Now, X could be a very low number. It could be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, or it could be, I've had people with 10 years, 12 years, 14 years experience coming and saying, Arun, I didn't know that I wanted to do an MBA, but now is the time for me to do so. What do I do? First thing that you need to realize that it is not just the number of years of experience that they're looking at. What they are really looking at is they are looking at your career progression and performance. Remember this. If you tell me that I've worked for 1 year, I'm okay, but what did you do in that 1 year? Did you do what every other fresher did? If you did what every other fresher did, then what's the big deal? Or if you say, Arun, I have 5 years experience, great. But how are you different from someone who has 4 years experience? Is it something that you have done extra? Because you're always going to be compared to people who have similar years of experience. Someone with 1-2 years experience will not be compared with someone with 8-10 years experience, correct? So you need to answer this question, how have I progressed vis-a-vis anyone else with a similar experience, correct? Second, this is a question that a lot of people again ask, what about my employer? What about the brand value? Good news, yes, the pedigree of your employer is also important. For example, if you have worked in a company, so there are 2 categories when it comes to pedigree. One is exclusivity of getting in. So when I say exclusivity of getting in, let us say a company like, let me give an example, let's say a Google, correct? So people know that it's tough to get into a Google or tough to get into an Amazon. So that could be the pedigree of your employer. Or it could be a global brand. Let's say most of the top auditing consulting firms fall in that category. So it could be a PwC, it could be a Ernst & Young, it could be a, let's say a Deloitte, it could be a KPMG, it could be a large tech company, it could be an IBM, it could be an Accenture, correct? So all of these do matter. I'm just telling that these do matter, but it is not the make or break, but yes, it does matter. In which case, a lot of students then ask, is a bigger company always better? Not necessarily, not really, that the bigger the company, the better it is. Because a lot of times what also happens, and you know this well, that in a larger company, your career progression may get curtailed, correct? Because a larger company, there is more so-called bureaucracy, right? It's a lot harder for you to kind of prove yourself when there are so many other people around you. So that's one thing that these schools are also aware of. So it's not necessary that bigger is better. I've had many students who have done some really unique work in small consulting firms, very boutique consulting firms, firms that have no more than 100 employees. I've had students who have worked for startups, very cutting edge startups, which have got funded. I've had students who have worked for startups, which eventually failed, correct? But their experience was so enriching, was so different that they had a lot of stories to write about in their application, correct? So it's not necessary that bigger is always better. What you need to focus instead is try to look at your roles and responsibilities, correct? In terms of, like what is it that you're expected to do? What are the things that come under your, so for example, let me give an example. Have you got cross-functional exposure? Let us say you're a tech guy. Have you worked with HR? Have you worked on recruiting from your alma mater? Or have you worked with, let's say, the marketing department? So another thing that they also look for is, along with your roles and responsibilities, have you also contributed? Have you also worked with other functions, other departments within your company? Correct? So I think from a work experience perspective, these are some of the things that you need to consider, right? All right, I see, since I told you that I'm not going to be responding on the chat, I think people have started putting things on the chat window. But let me just see if, yeah, so I'm just going to dismiss questions which I think doesn't make sense. So it's, just looking at if there are any questions. Shakti, I know, please don't touch the Q&A. That is the point of the webinar. But just look at the quality of questions that are being asked, right? So if you look at the quality of questions, people are just, so now just think about it. 69% BCom, 55% MCom, CFA cleared. What's a good GMAT score for me? I cannot answer that question, right? Just try to think. So I wish I could, but unfortunately, the questions also have to be questions where there has to be. I agree, Shakti, but in fact, I'm saying that it's okay. You can go ahead and do it, but I really don't know how to do it. Just come and look at my position. There are 50 open questions. How can I answer 50 questions? Even if I take 2 minutes per question, that is 100 minutes. That is 1.5 hours. Correct? So I think I really need to figure out something about this Q&A part. Maybe from the next webinar, I will try to do a better job of this. I consider this to be my failure, so I apologize. But I really won't be able to answer. Right now, it's at 14, almost like 70 questions have been asked, right? And it's just impossible for me to answer those, right? All right. So the third thing that B schools are going to look for is your leadership potential, your leadership aptitude, correct? Now, what is the definition of leadership? What do B schools look for when they say or when they use the word leadership? So for this, I would like you to think about leadership in this way, okay? I would like you to think of leadership as this is things that you probably are not expected to do. This is something that is not in your area of concern. This is over and above the area of concern. This is something that both at work and outside of work, you're not expected to do. That is my definition of leadership. If you do what is expected of you, I don't think that leadership. You cannot tell that at work, let's say I got a 4.5 rating. Well, that's good, but that will come under point number 2, work experience. By the way, just on that, in the notepad or whatever, wherever you're writing, please make sure even for work experience, you give yourself a rating between 1 and 10, correct? And try to see if you are able to kind of grade yourself on that, right? Whatever, see, right now, you could give yourself a 4, 5, doesn't matter. See, you have to understand, it's a very subjective call, right? For someone, a 4 could be a 6 for someone else, correct? So it is not something that is objective, something very subjective. Give what you think is a rating between 1 and 10. And at the end of it, I will tell you what to do. Okay, I'm going to give you a next step. I'm going to give you a plan. So just wait till the end of this webinar, and I'm going to tell you how that month by month plan will work out. Okay. So the third point, as I was telling, is leadership. So again, in leadership, you need to look at and say, what is it that I have done inside work? So just giving you some examples of leadership at work. Did you take any initiative, right? Did you volunteer for anything? And if you're volunteering, I'm looking at ownership, correct? So when you take an initiative, when you're volunteering, what is the initiative that you took? I'll give an example. One of my students at her workplace, essentially volunteered for green energy. So she wanted to make her workplace a greener place. So what she did was she formed a core committee. And as part of this committee, they identified 5 or 6 quick fixes within the company, such as switching off the lights after 8 o'clock, such as making sure that the printer, is not wasted, such as making sure that the systems are turned off. So there were a bunch of things that they identified, and she was the person who spearheaded this whole thing within the team, and she was obviously recognized within her workplace, but more than that, I think it was her personal sense of accomplishment that she was able to bring about a change in the way people look at energy consumption, right? It could be independently driving projects. Let me give you one more example of how it was done. So one of the other students, what he had done at work was, he said there is a lot of things that is lying around, but there was no one common repository for all the knowledge base to be there. So there were certain things, but it was never formalized. So what he did, all the different learnings from the project, he was able to kind of integrate put it into a knowledge base. And remember, he did this over and above his work. This was not part of his KPI. This was not part of his KRA. But he felt that, doing so will just make the workplace a lot better. He also used to, he also conducted, certain lessons learned. He would put the recordings in the same intranet. So he was the webmaster or the admin for this intranet, correct? Again, the whole idea being the fact that he did something over and above what was expected. See, the reason I'm giving you all these ideas is so that you start thinking along these lines, right? So you start consciously figuring out what is it that I can possibly do at my workplace. The third thing was innovation. So this was again a student who actually realized that, so he basically worked for a services company, and a lot of what they used to do, he found that there were certain things that were very common. So he had a product idea. So he actually created the product idea. He took that product idea to the management. He spent some time, detailing what the product would have or what the product should have. And, so here is the deal, right? See, the product never came out before he joined the B school, correct? So it is not that he went to the B school and say, see, this is the product I created. But the fact that he took the initiative and the fact that he had already made progress, and he said, look, my idea was to give this suggestion and to kind of help the company do it. But obviously, the product development itself would be a lot longer. So though he put it on his resume, though he mentioned it and he was asked questions about it in the interview, they are not really expecting that, acha, show me the product, correct? So they assume that, that's something that is work in progress. Again, there were things about team management, mentoring, training new recruits. I know a lot of times there is a buddy system in companies and you are expected to do. Again, you need to show leadership where you are doing something over and above what is told to you, over and above what people may expect you to do that, right? So let's look at what could be done outside of work, correct? So outside of work, what they are really looking at is when they say that, when they look at the word leadership, they are saying, is he constructively utilizing his time? Is he someone who comes back from work, opens a fridge, grabs a beer, sits in front of his TV and watches Netflix? Or is he someone who has the drive, the passion, the enthusiasm to do something? Correct? And one of the things that, a lot of myth that people have is extracurricular means NGO work. Absolutely not. Think about it. It's a very cultural thing. In the US, they have, NGOs and giving for society, because to a large extent that society is a society where, people, you still have the haves and have-nots. But I think the society is kind of built in such a way that it's a lot easier for you to participate in, such NGO work, quote unquote. But in India, it's a lot harder. Monetary donations don't count, right? So I've had students who have come and said, I have sponsored a girl child through Cry and I pay 2,000 rupees every month. Great, but look at it this way, 2,000 rupees every month from your account, it is almost like paying an EMI for a mobile phone, correct? So that is not really going to be considered as leadership. Or a tea plant, a sapling plantation drive. One Sunday morning, everyone from my company were put in this bus. We all went to this place and we all posed for pictures where we were planting the saplings. Our HR came and took pictures. It was put in our company newsletter. Again, what they are really looking at is volunteering activities. Excuse me. Where you have used your skills, where your participation has been extended. You know, it's an extended participation that you have done over a period of time, correct? So that's what really they are looking at. For example, one of my students, what he did was he basically made sure that when he was in kind of when he was in uh, volunteering for this NGO, so he volunteered for an NGO for which the cause was very dear to him. So basically, the cause was he worked with people who were deaf and dumb, so basically speech and hearing impaired. So when he worked with this NGO, what he said is, you know, let me help you create a website. Let me run your Facebook page. So what he did was he created their website. He used a very simple theme from Wix. It's just a template that you can pick. So it's not that it was his coding or something, but just that, he put the mission of the NGO. He actually also added a small widget for collecting donations, correct? And the same thing, he created a Facebook page. He ran some ads on the Facebook page, again, collected some donations, and also spoke about the fact that it's tax exempt and so on. And within a matter of 6 months, the NGO started receiving donations. It wasn't much, but over a period of a few months, they collected a few lakhs, right? Now, he could have donated that few lakhs from his pocket, but the very fact that he was able to ensure that what he did enabled the NGO to collect money even after he goes to school. See, think about it this way. If I were to pick two stories, the first one tells how I, let's say, taught my maid's children, let's say, English or maths when they were in 6th or 7th standard. Maybe I volunteered and I called them for home tuitions and I taught them. Now, my impact basically lives with me, which means tomorrow I go away, my impact is going to stop. But think about it this way. This guy, because he created the website, because he created their Facebook page, because he got the whole process up and running, even tomorrow when he joins a B school, the process he started can be taken over by someone else. So that's another thing that B schools look for. B schools see what is the long-term impact that this guy is able to have, right? What is it that he is able to leave people with? Is there a legacy that he's leaving us with? Or is it just, a few hours that he did something? Again, some more examples, wrote blogs to create awareness, helped maintain accounts for it. All of these are volunteering activities where you can use your skill. And again, the myth that it is for an NGO, it can be anything, correct? But they are looking at leadership. It could be a friend's startup that you want to volunteer for. That is still okay, right? My friend had a startup. I volunteered to be a product manager for it. Great, right? Even that is leadership. So what I want you to do at this point, again, I think you have understood the drill. On a scale of 1 to 10, ask yourself, how much would you rate your leadership? Both at work, outside of work, cumulatively on a scale of 1 to 10, what stories do you have? What do you think you can put? How much do you rate yourself for leadership? Okay? Could be any number, but just go ahead and put a number. Okay? I'm just going to gently see if I'm just looking if there is anything specific that I would like to look at. All right. Okay. Now let's get to the next part. And this is something that a lot of people have asked, saying, Arun, all of this is fine. I keep hearing the things that, come from diversity, correct? How do I bring out the diversity quotient? How do I bring out my X factor, right? You might have heard of this word. What is your X factor? Because one thing that you need to remember about this whole admission process is that you are always going to be compared with people who have similar profile as you do. In other words, think of it this way. In the whole MBA admission process, you are going to be in a room where you are going to be surrounded by people who all have similar profiles as you do. So if you are an IT engineer, if you're a software engineer with 4 years experience working with Wipro, you are going to be compared with another software engineer who has 5 years experience working in TCS or 3 years experience working in Cognizant. If you are a chartered accountant working for Deloitte, you're going to be compared with another chartered accountant working for KPMG. If you're working in, let's say, the retail industry at, let's say, Big Bazaar, you're going to be compared with another person who's working in the retail industry in, let's say, a Puma. If you are a person who's in sales, you're going to be compared with everyone else who's going to be in sales, right? So remember that your competition is always within your profile pool. What is a profile pool? Profile pool is the list of people who all have similar profiles as you do. How do you then create diversity? So, as I said, the first thing that they're going to look for is they're going to look for demographics. The very fact that you are from India puts you at a disadvantage. I'm sorry, but that's a fact. Okay, the very fact that you're from India puts you at disadvantage just because there are so many people from India applying. If you had come from, let's say, Rwanda in Africa, trust me, even with a 640 GMAT, your chances of getting into a top school is very bright because they don't have a lot of people from Rwanda applying to a B school, correct? Your gender also plays a role. Funnily as it may seem, women have a clear advantage over here. So a woman candidate has an advantage over a male candidate just because of gender. The industry that you represent, the top 3 or 4 industries, technology sector, finance, manufacturing, consulting, right? These are the top 4 sectors. You are not unique, right? 90% of people applying to a B school come from these 4 sectors. But maybe you are working in a very unique industry, right? Maybe you're working in an industry that, not many is very underrepresented. So let me give an example of an industry that is underrepresented. So one of my students, I think 3 years ago, so she used to work for the microfinance lending industry. So she used to work with tribal women in this whole Madhya Pradesh, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh area. And it was around self-sufficiency. So she would be giving, microfinance. So if you know how the microfinance lending industry works, you know how it works. So she was from that industry. Not a lot of people from that industry applying to, MBA programs, correct? So that's one thing. What if you don't have a diversity factor when it comes to demographics? What about your personal perspectives, your family background, maybe where you grew up? The B school essays will have a lot of opportunity for you to present your personal view. Maybe you are part of, maybe you grew up, maybe you went a vernacular medium, right? Maybe you started learning English only when you were in college. Maybe your father was in the army. Maybe every 2 years you're getting transferred. And that gave you a certain sense of adaptiveness, correct? These are the stories that B schools want to learn. What is your perspective? The way you look at the world, is that diverse? Is that different? Do you bring something to the table? Would you be able to add value to your classmates in the B school? What unique hobbies do you have? Are there any interests that make you unique? Any skills that you have learned? Right? For example, if I were to give you some example, right? Could be anything, music, books, movies, sports, technology. For any of your passions, right? They are looking at, so I'll tell you one student, he used to write movie reviews, right? and he used to write it on his website. I'm talking about 4 or 5 years ago. I think I actually Googled for it a couple of weeks ago, and I saw that he had discontinued. But I think from 2009 till 2011, for about 3 years, he wrote movie reviews. So he would actually write, what is good about the movie, bad about the movie. His SEO got a major spike. He was, he pretty much ended up being a sought after reviewer. I had someone who had 30,000 Twitter followers. Think about it. 30,000 Twitter followers. That was his claim to fame. I know someone who's an influencer on Instagram, correct? I know someone who's part of a rock band, right? And he says, look, every weekend I spend with my band, I'm just jamming, I'm just jamming with them. I'm just playing music. I go to these various concerts and, that's what he did. So this is not something that is necessarily something that you're doing for your career, correct? I know someone who actually became a Wikipedia editor, which means that every time a news changed, he would go onto Wikipedia and he would edit it, correct? And, in the Wikipedia world, he was, like a star, right? Whatever you do, your passion, I want to see what is it that you've pursued. Create that distinction, create that diversity, create that uniqueness factor. I know someone who, in the interview, he had an interview and they said, what are your hobbies? He said, my hobbies are watching movies. And I said, sure. So tell me, what movies do you watch? He said, I have seen every single movie in the IMDb top 100. And I said, wow. You've seen every movie in the IMDb top 100, so can you tell me what are your favorites? And I'm talking about an interview, right? So he said, oh, in the top 10, this movie, that movie, I think this is overrated. I think that is underrated. And they start talking about this Iranian film director. So the interviewer also had an interest in movies, and he started engaging, and he said, he'd seen this movie, and they started having a conversation about his this Iranian director's movies. And this guy said, have you seen that movie? And the interviewer said, no, I had not. And he said, okay, after the interview, I'm going to send you the link. You should watch that movie. It's a great movie. So as simple as movies became, can be huge. In case you're interested to know, he eventually got into that B school with a scholarship. Now, I'm not trying to say that because he watched movies, he got into a B school with scholarship. But what I'm trying to say is pursue one passion, make that the unique point in your application, correct? So is there anything unique that you could pick in your background? Could be demographic, could be your personal perspective, could be your hobby, interest, skills. Again, what I want you to do on a scale of 1 to 10, can you tell me if there is a way you could, could you put it like, let's say, are you going to give yourself a 3, 5, 7, and you could put any number here. See, you have to understand, I cannot tell you what your number is. It is something that you have in your head, correct? Okay. Any number that you think is fit for you. Don't worry. Put whatever number. Because remember, this number you're not going to compare against others. There is a reason I'm asking you to put this number, right? Trust me on this. Just wait for another 10 more minutes and I'll tell you the reason why I'm asking you to put that number. Okay? Just another 10 more minutes. Okay, number 5. And this one, I don't know how much of it can change very realistically. But what B schools are also looking at is your personality. And when I say personality, they are looking at your communication, they are looking at your clarity, they are looking at your character, they are looking at your essays. Someone had written in the chat window that all of this is great, but how do you write? How do you write? See, you should not be even asking this question. If you are someone who can write well, this should not be a worry. If it's not something that you do very well, it's a good time. It is still January. Your application essays are going to be out only by August. We have a good 6-8 months in front of us, right? So very important that you start working on your communication. Try to see if you can improve your spoken English. Try to see if you get an opportunity to go in front of an audience, address an audience, make sure that you're able to give presentation. Because see, in the interview, what will happen is all of what you will written, they are going to gauge you. based on how well you are able to respond. So even if you think you have written very well, if you're not able to communicate the way you speak, the way your diction is, the way your pronunciation is, the way you're able to gesticulate using your hands, all of these will go a long way in getting you that admit. No matter what people say, the fact is, once you, let me give an example. Let us say you were to get into IIM Ahmedabad. You know what IIM Ahmedabad is thinking? IIM Ahmedabad is thinking that, look, if this guy graduates from our PGPX program and he goes out there and if he's not able to communicate clearly, first, your career in management is dependent on how well you are able to communicate. So if you have chosen management as your career, if you have decided that an MBA is the way forward for you, my request to you is to hone your communication skills. Because what PGPX is going to say 2 years, 3 years down the line, when someone speaks to him, if he's not going to be able to impress people with his personality and his communication, it will reflect poorly on the school. Think about it. People will say, "Arey, ye kahan se aaya? Ahmedabad se karke aa gaya?" Right? Or ye kahan se, how did he manage to get into ISP? Yaar, he can't even talk clearly. Right? So they are very conscious of this. See, I'm not trying to say that you need to be able to address an audience of thousands of people and you need to be like the Tony Robbins of India, right? But you need to be able to communicate clearly, either through your written words and through your, through your speech. So 8 months, according to me, a long time. In case you have not thought of it, please start working on it from now. Okay? You got another good 6-8 months. If you come to me in August, I won't be able to tell you this. In January, I'm able to tell you this. Correct? You can do a couple of simple exercises. The first exercise that you could do is start writing every day. Maintain a daily journal, right? And when you write a daily journal, don't overthink it. Whatever comes to your mind, just start typing it. Start writing it in with a paper and a pen if you are old school, or else you can just take your laptop and just start typing every day. 15-20 minutes, whatever comes to your mind on any topic, start writing. Same thing for speaking. Wherever there is an opportunity at work, outside of work, try to seize those opportunities. If it is a status meeting, try to volunteer. Can I give the presentation for the status meeting? Is there a way by which I'm able to teach something to my peers, right? As long as you have an audience of greater than 0, right? Make sure that you seize that opportunity. You want to be a stand-up comic? Great. Go ahead and start cracking jokes. Don't worry about the quality of jokes, right? But unless and until you go there and start doing, it's going to be very hard for you to improve on this. But just wanted to let you know, B schools look at this. So again, what I want you to do on a scale of 1 to 10, please write down what number you would give yourself, right? And again, as I said, you could give yourself a 10 on it, or you could give yourself a 1 on it. I don't care, but just give a number. Don't worry about what others are going to give themselves. Just worry about what you need to give yourself. Okay? Finally, the last part, goal clarity. Okay? So goal clarity, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a set of questions. What I want you to do is start thinking about these questions from now. Okay? Because by the time you fill in the application, the essay questions could be differently worded, but in essence, they are going to ask you only these 6 things. All B school applications. And one thing that a B school looks for is this person, okay, the one that I'm going to admit, is this person, does the person have the clarity? Because as I told you earlier, you know, a B school can be a pretty intense and overwhelming experience. And the last thing that they want is anyone gets into a B school without having an idea of what he or she will take away from the program. And if that happens, what it will end up doing is, so I'll give an analogy, right? So one of the people who started Crackverbal, actually, a very good friend of mine, Aruna. So she said this. She said, Arun, the B school school experience is like walking down an orchard, right? Where there are a lot of fruit-bearing trees. There is an apple tree, there is an orange tree, and so many different ripe, juicy fruits. Think of it this way. If you have a basket, okay, and this basket can hold only so many fruits, right? 10 or 12 fruits. If you are not clear what you want to make at the end of the journey, you will not know what to pluck from the orchard, correct? So what will happen? You'll go berserk, you'll go crazy, you'll try to pick as many fruits as possible. But if you don't know what you're going to be making, that whole journey could be futile. So what they want, is this person clear what he or she wants to do in life? In fact, one of the biggest markers for success has been clarity, has been the fact that people who get there know where to go in the first place. If you don't know where you're headed, you probably are not going to be reaching there in the first place. Okay, so what are the 6 questions? First one, where do you want to go? What is your short-term, mid-term goal? 3 years after your MBA, where do you see yourself? Simple, right? Where do you see yourself? And I want to know exactly what you have in your mind. I want to know what is the position you're looking at. I want to know what kind of role, what is your dream company? What will a day in your life look like? Correct? So I need to know all of that when I hear your post-MBA goal. Don't tell me things like, oh, you know what? I want to be involved in, I want to be in a general management role. That is too vague, right? So you can't write something as vague like that. You have to be specific. What company are you working for? What company do you think you will work for, right? What will be your role? What will a day in your life look like? Correct? Why do you want to go there? Why is that a goal? Of all the goals in life, if you say, I want to get into consulting, why do you want to get into consulting? What is so important? I want to know a little bit more about your background, your passion for that industry. Correct? So unless and until I don't understand your passion for that industry, it is not going to give me trust that you want to actually do that. Correct? So why do you want to do that? Why are you the best person to reach there? What in your background tells me that you have what it takes to get there? Either it could be through your work ex, or it could be through your additional involvement, right? Maybe it is a course that you have taken. And as I say, one thing for any post-MBA goal, remember the 3 E's. Educate, expose, experience. Educate yourself. Take more MOOCs, online courses. Experience it. Try to do some kind of a part-time work experience if possible. Correct? Expose yourself. Try to, go out there, meet people. Maybe there is a local conference, product manager conference. Go there. Talk to people. Do you know anyone in your company who's doing that? Do you know anyone in LinkedIn? LinkedIn is a great resource. In fact, feel free to add people on LinkedIn. You can go ahead and look me up on LinkedIn, correct? And, go ahead and, add me on LinkedIn. I'd be more than glad to connect with all of you on LinkedIn, right? Now, once you go there on LinkedIn, once you've connected with me, you will see a lot of other connections opening up, correct? Because the moment you connect with one person, you see a lot of other people who will then become your second level of connection, correct? Talk to people who are doing things that you're already doing, correct? That, according to me, is a great way for you to learn more about, your post-MBA goals. Now that you know what you bring to the table and where you want to go, can you tell me what is it that you think an MBA is going to do to you? What is it that you really expect from an MBA? Honestly, correct? And once you are able to get to that level of clarity, once you are able to get that sense of, you know, uh, what an MBA does, this also is a good time for you to reflect on what is it that you think, okay? What are the schools that will help you bridge this gap? Correct? It's very important that you answer that also. What is the school? So, for example, if one of your dreams, let me go one by one across these 6 sections, right? I want to work in India in product management in a tech company. That's where I want to go. You need to know what is it that you want to go to. Why do you want to go there? Because I feel that I have seen the kind of products that have revolutionized either an Uber or an Amazon, or maybe closer home a Ola or a Flipkart. But I've really seen how a Swiggy has changed my life, and I realized the power of products. Correct. And I want to be someday making a product that will influence positively the life of millions of people. Why are you the best person to get there? Because I have a tech background. I have actually done coding. I can roll up my sleeves and I can get the job done. The reason I want to do an MBA is because I feel that I need to have the leadership and the management perspective. And why I want an MBA from ISB is because I believe that, it's one of the best schools in India. At 1 year, it gives me the terrific ROI, blah, blah, blah. Correct? So now what happens is you have one story, you need to be able to connect the entire thread, correct, across all of these 6 questions, right? And this is perhaps the most important question. Why do you want to go there now? Why not last year? Why not next year? What is it in your career? Why is it that you have reached this particular point of inflection where you feel that now is the best time for you to do an MBA? And I want you to think about these 6 questions, right? Maybe take out time. I don't know where you stand today. So again, I want you to rate yourself. Maybe you are at a 2, maybe you're at a 8, maybe you're at a 5, I don't know. But just try to realistically tell where you stand. Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10. All right, good. So now, how do I create my 6-month plan, right? This is what we said we will be doing the session on. So how do I actually, go ahead and make this work, right? How do I create a plan? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a very simple 4-step process, okay? It's a very simple 4-step process. Now, the 6 elements that we discussed and the 6 elements, I wanted you to give yourself a score anywhere from 1 to 10. By the way, just one point on that. Anyone who's giving yourself a 10, I really want you to reconsider, right? Because, I would, for example, communication, I would give myself an 8, right? I feel that I'm a lifelong learner. There is a lot that I can still learn. So it is not necessary that, you give yourself a 10. Just make sure that you give whatever is a comfortable number, correct? Now, step 1, that's what I want you to do, right? I want you to create a simple Excel. Maybe, just give one column, and in that column, you put all the traits. In the next column, give your current assessment. Whatever number you picked, give that as your assessment in the second column. And in the third column, give a remark, like, why do you think that is your assessment? What is it that you think you have done in order for you to give yourself that assessment? Don't write a paragraph, just a couple of lines would be more than enough. Okay? So first column, what is the specific thing you're looking at? That one of the 6 things that we spoke about. The second column, what is your current rating? Third column, why you think you have given yourself that rating? Fourth column, what would you like that rating to be? Today you're giving yourself a 4. Can you make that rating a 7? Don't try to make everything 10. Okay, it's not going to be like all the 6 parameters, you're going to give yourself 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, right? I mean, let's be realistic. That's not going to happen. Today I have a 4 because I feel my undergrad is poor. Okay, but I think with a great GMAT score, with a 760 on the GMAT, I can get it to 8. So then what happens? Your last column becomes what is it that is required for you to do in order to move that score. Now you realize why I told you that it doesn't matter what you give yourself. You can give yourself whatever number. If you have given yourself a 7, ask yourself, what can I do to make it a 8? If you have given yourself a 4, ask yourself, what can I do to make it a 5? So let me just give you the columns once again. First, the specific trait. The second, what is your current assessment? Third column, why are you giving yourself for that assessment? Why? Why is it that you give yourself a 4? Fourth column, what would you like that score to become? The future goal, the future number. And the last column, the fifth column, what is it that you are going to do from today in order to improve that score? Correct? And sometimes it's always good to talk to people, talk to friends and family. I think a lot of times we think it's a lonely journey. Not true. Talk to people, ask them, like this diversity factor, what do you think would be an X factor for me? What do you think makes me diverse? Right? Talk to people. Work, maybe you want to even talk to your manager, right? That, hey, I know I've been kind of head down into this particular function, right? But I would like to do something a little different. Is there an opportunity for me to do something different? See, if you have an open conversation with your manager, trust me, he will. So see, what is the option that your manager has? He's going to say, no, you continue doing whatever you're doing. In which case, he has a greater risk of losing you. See, managers also understand that, right? So he knows he has a greater risk of losing you. So many a times, if you have a very open conversation, you will realize that, people are a lot more empathetic, correct? Do that. You have another 1 week for this. Make sure you sit down, create that Excel, create a plan. Without having a plan, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail, correct? Once you've done that, step 2, identify just 2 or 3 areas where you want to showcase, okay, that you want to showcase on your profile. So again, I am requesting, please don't make drastic changes in the next 6 months. Don't try to work on 10 areas. It is impossible. If you feel, for example, that your work experience is good enough, leave it. Maybe there is nothing wrong in your work ex. It is not that all the 6 areas have to be improved, correct? Maybe 1 or 2 of those areas are already good, okay? Try to work on your weakness. The analogy that I have for this is, let's say that you go and meet a prospective groom or a prospective bride. You want to get married, correct? So let us say that you're a girl, you're trying to get married to this guy, correct? Now, let's say there are a bunch of parameters you're looking. One parameter that you're looking at is how much is he earning? And the second parameter that you have is you want him to have done an MBA. Let us say, for the sake of argument, right? Now, remember, these are 2 different factors. How much is he earning and whether he has an MBA or not are 2 different factors. Let us say you get to meet this guy who's earning well, but doesn't have an MBA. So what will happen is you will reject him because though he's earning well, he doesn't have an MBA. Now, let's say tomorrow he comes and says, oh, by the way, my salary, I got a salary increase. Now I'm earning, 1.3x of what I was earning earlier. Will you marry me? What would you say? You would say, look, the reason I rejected you was not because of your earning potential, but it was because of the fact that I have a requirement. You should have an MBA and you don't have an MBA. So what may happen is, maybe for the B school, they don't have a problem with your academic potential. Maybe they don't have a problem with your work ex, but maybe they have a problem with your leadership. Correct? So what will happen if you say, oh, look, by the way, I've got a promotion at work. They're going to say, look, that was never a problem for me. My problem was your leadership potential and you need to work on that. So pick 2 or 3 areas that you want to work on. Don't try to fix everything else. Now that you've picked 2 or 3 areas, what I would like you to do is I would like you to create an action plan. And it is best to have this action plan with clear monthly goals so that you know what is the direction in which you're headed. Correct? If you don't have a goal, if you're just going to go through the motions, it's going to be very hard for you to do this. Make sure you have a goal for February. Make sure you have a goal for March. Make sure you have a goal for April. You need to make sure that you have a very clear-cut goal. If you're not able to do that, it's going to be very hard for you to, really try to, measure whether you're making progress or not. Once you've done that in February, you've identified what are the 2 or 3 areas you want to showcase, what are the goals that you've set for yourself, then starts your next step, which is execute. Don't focus only on the task, focus on the outcome, right? So you need to focus on what is the outcome that you need to have in order for you to make the progress, correct? So focus on the outcome, execute, right? March, April, May, I'm giving you 3 clear months, right? Make sure you're able to do that. And one other thing is keep making course corrections. For example, let us say that you said that I wanted to, let's say, take the GMAT by March. And it so happened that you realize that instead of taking the GMAT in March, you ended up taking it in April. That's okay, correct? So you need to make sure that you are able to focus, okay, on, what is it that you are expected to do, and keep updating the Excel. Keep going back to this Excel, correct? Keep making changes to it. Very important, all right? Step 4, once you have done all of that, at this point, don't worry about the stories, correct? But once you have kind of spent at least 3 months doing all of this, make sure that by June, you start maintaining stories, right? Stories that you would include in your essays. Remember, your application form is not going to happen till August. September is when your first deadlines will start, correct? So what you need to do by August, you need to make sure that you have at least the broad storylines based on this that you would like to include. Also remember, how will you quantify it in your application form? Application form will ask you a lot of questions, a lot of data about your extracurriculars. How are you going to be able to quantify it? Saying that I'm good in maths is one thing. It's 12 o'clock. Saying that I'm ranked number 3 in India in Sudoku is another thing, correct? So you don't want to say I'm good in maths. You want to say I'm number 3 in Sudoku. You don't want to say I'm good in English. You want to say, I've won a crossword puzzle in my state, right? Something that would quantify whatever you are doing. So with that, I would kind of conclude today's webinar. We are round about at the 12 noon mark. Again, as I said, to a large extent, I wish I could, I have basically answered a lot of this. I'm pretty sure that you have a lot more questions for me, and I would love to take those questions. Just a small thing, make sure that after today's session, please write us, please talk to whoever you've been talking to in Crackverbal. It will take you 5 minutes after this webinar. Just drop an email. Whatever question that you had for me, please put it, drop an email to your point of contact at Crackverbal. I assure you that by in the next few days, you would be getting a response. Hopefully, someone would get onto a call and even help you address those questions, right? So don't worry about that. Okay, so I pretty much wanted to make sure that we ended. In case you have not done so, we also have an MBA starter kit. So this is something that I'll just give it to you. It's a $99 kit. Let me just give you the link. So I'm just giving you the link. It's just easier for me to copy paste. So you can go ahead and give the coupon code over here, Crack MBA 2018. So exclusively for people who are participating in today's webinar, right? Sorry, 2019, 2018, Crack MBA 2018. Just give it at the checkout place. So you realize, right, I could have given this for free, but the reason we are charging $1 is because we want that commitment from you, correct? So even if you pay $1, which is not a lot of money, but that $1 will give you the commitment to watch these videos. That is the only reason we are charging $1 for this, but I want to make sure that you're set on course, you're set on target to meet your MBA goals. Thanks so much. I hope this webinar was useful. Please go ahead and share this with your friends. So glad to have all of you. Thank you so much for your time on a Sunday morning, right? I really appreciate you coming here and spending time with me. Thank you, and I hope to see you sometime very soon. Bye-bye.